Hi, Old Radio Al here. I'm in what I call my radio room today. This is, where I do my electrical part of my radio work. You've probably seen this room before. Kind of limited as to space, and this setup has worked pretty well for me. As long as I'm only working on one project at a time, anyway. It's an old farm table that I picked up at a flea market. It makes a pretty good workbench. My Variac. Kind of an interesting story about that Variac. I picked it up on Craigslist along with the isolation transformer that it's plugged into, which sits down below the table. Bought them both from a ham, and he was selling them for the estate of a guy in his club. It was kind of an interview process actually when I bought them. I thought that was kind of nice. They wanted to make sure the person that bought them would use them and appreciate them, as the guy had put the Variac together himself. And I liked it. It replaced a Chinese one that I had that worked, but it wasn't really what I wanted. I like this one a lot better. It's got a voltmeter and ammeter built into it. The ammeter's not much use. I need to put a lower rated one in there. Maybe I'll do that someday, I don't know. Anyway, I thought that whole transaction was kind of nice. The radio that I have today is a Philco. It's a model 514. It was built in 1928. 1928 was Philco's first year building radios. Prior to that, Philco, the Philadelphia storage battery company, was in business making batteries and battery chargers and what they called socket power units. Socket power units were they were essentially battery eliminators that allowed you to plug battery sets into the wall socket, hence the name, I guess. Well, the development of vacuum tube rectifiers kind of made those socket power units obsolete, so I guess to diversify, Philco started making radios. The rest, as they say, is history. Philco actually goes back further. I think like 1892, something like that, and it was called the Helios Electric Company. They made carbon arc lamps, and then the Philco brand name goes back to like 1919 when they got into the battery business. This radio, as I said, is a model 514. It's an AC powered 7-tube TRF set. All the models in 1928 used the same chassis. This thing sold for a hefty $125 with a matching speaker. The matching speaker sold for $27.50. It was a model 214. There were 5 of these in different colors. This is a stamped metal case. The dog's heard me knocking on the radio and think someone's at the door. This color, it was called Nile Green. They were designed by a guy named Hollingsworth Pierce. Let's see if that light is putting a little too much glare on it. he was a, I guess, a famous furniture designer at the time. And then Philco commissioned an artist. Her name was Matilde Massaros, and they billed her as Mademoiselle Massaros to design the painting that they did on these radios. It's hand painting. She was famous for painting on furniture and lampshades and things like that, I guess. And Philco thought that painting this way would appeal to the woman of the house. So they, you know, big clunky metal box, and I guess they figured if they spruced it up a little bit, it would be a little, you know, more palatable for sitting in your parlor. So anyway, she hired a group of artists to paint her designs on these radios, you know. So no two of them's going to be exactly the same. See little floral. Well, over the years, this is, you know, this is with most things. The new became old. These are no exception. You know, you can see all the little paint flecks on this radio. Little white paint flecks. So what happened for the majority of these radios that stayed in service, you know, weren't just gotten rid of, is people would want to spruce them up, and the majority of them ended up getting repainted, just painted over. So not many of these exist with their original paint scheme intact. So this one's not going to be touched. It is in a non-working state. I'm not sure if I'm going to restore it electrically, but it's going to stay the way it is on the outside. Let me open up the cover. It actually just, the lid comes off, and there you go. Alright. So, yeah, it's not a working radio, so no music today, guys. But I thought it would be interesting. You know, as I said, I hadn't featured a Philco, so why not start at the beginning? Had a message in my inbox, you know, essentially it was asking me why I don't do restoration videos. You know, I answered that guy, and I thought, you know, maybe some others might be wondering the same thing. Here's my take on that. I've sort of mentioned it before in my comments. You know, here on YouTube, there's a lot of people doing that type of video. And, you know, some of them just do it very well. You know, John, as I've mentioned a few times, he's a really great teacher, and he's innovative and coming up with techniques and ways to do things. You know, Rick McWhorter, he's just great at this, you know. He's way beyond my league. And Bob Anderson, he's another one. He, you know, just phenomenal. Radio TV Phono Nut. He's another guy. He's very entertaining, and he's knowledgeable. And I just never miss those guys' videos. you know. In the phonograph world, although, you know, they're not limited to phonographs, but they seem to specialize in those. Chris Cuff, he's just out, you know, it amazes me the things he does. And there's another gentleman, Glenn, Seaberg's Rock. He's just an encyclopedia of knowledge about those things. You know, he does mostly demonstration videos, just filled with facts, and I guess without thinking about it much. That just kind of fell into being the kind of video that I'm doing. Although, you know, I don't do it as well as he does. You know, I like to show you different radios and tell you their stories, what I know of them anyway. You know, as I told John, you know, watching someone just replace components in a radio gets boring after a while, you know, just watching them. But someone having the ability to tell you why and how they're doing it, that's what makes it interesting. All those guys I mentioned, they're great at it, and I really don't think I would be. I just want to share my radios with you. So I guess that's where I hope to fit in. Hopefully, as I said, I'll get better at it over time. So that's about it for today. My little pinup girls. And I'm going to leave you with that and more radios to come.